It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
To the program, once again, we've got Mr. Josh Waters is with us. Josh, thanks so much for waking up with us this morning.
Hey, yeah, good morning, Paul.
So you were in the courtroom. The big news today is that we have former legislator Micah Neal yesterday was sentenced to 3 years probation for accepting multiple bribes. What can you tell us about that?
Well, it was from last week, starting with John Woods, Randall Shelton sentenced last week, and Orrin Paris Wednesday, and then, Micah Neal yesterday. It was really, as it progressed, we saw the severity of the crimes play out, and then how each of those defendants, how they cooperated, how that affected their sentence, all the way from John Woods not cooperating at all, really showing no remorse. The judge talking about how he had a depraved heart and a criminal mentality, got 18 years. And then yesterday, Micah Neal came forward right away. The government didn't ask him to come forward. He just came forward, fully cooperated. And they really stressed that yesterday. It's kind of unprecedented cooperation. And he got 3 years probation. And so the message that was sent yesterday, according to Dak Keys and the judge, and I think everyone really in the courtroom was, if you come forward immediately or honest and cooperate, you're going to, still face serious consequences, but not as serious as 18 years in prison.
Yeah.
So that was the message that came out yesterday.
So this recap over at conduitnews.com, prosecutors made a motion for a 10-level adjustment downward for Neal because of his good faith cooperation with prosecutors. Now, I know that's legalese to some of us, it is to me, but not to you, Josh Waters. So a 10-level adjustment, what does it mean?
So whenever someone is being sentenced, basically what they look at as far as guideline is kind of two entry points on the grid is how Judge Brooks describes it. And so basically they get points. And so based on, the seriousness of the offense, they get so many points. There's some other level enhancement. So in this case, Micah Neal starting out did get a level enhancement for being an elected official. He got a 2, that was, I think, a 4-level enhancement. He got a 12 or 14 level enhancement because the amount of money was over $500,000 that had been bribed. He got a 2-level enhancement for multiple bribes. And so when you add all that up, there's a point system, and then you look at that point system and how it compares to the grid, and that recommends basically a guideline sentence of, X amount of months based on the seriousness of the crime. And so at the beginning of the morning, whenever the judge went first through all those steps, Micah Neal was facing 7 to 9 years in prison. And so what he did first was, on motion by the prosecutors, he accepted a motion that would basically take off 10 points and take Micah Neal down on that guideline sentence. But even after he took the 10-level adjustment down, he was still facing 3 to 4 years because of the seriousness of the crime. So that's what they did first. And then by the end of the day, though, the judge, that's just a recommendation. The judge still has the final authority. And at the end of the day, the judge did grant the defendant's request for probation. He will have to have 1 year home confinement as part of his sentence, and then pay back $200,000 in restitution over the next 3 years.
And, it's also worth of note here that former state representative Micah Neal, he'll also, he's got to be at home for 1 year, but he's going to be able to go to work, and he's going to be able to go to church as part of this sentence. Yes. And the reason I want to bring that up, Josh, is I just want people to understand, like you said, what a message this is for people who are going to come forward and, I'm just going to say it, rat on the schemes that are going on. And, Micah Neal comes forward when he gets wind that there is an investigation going, and he's like, you know what? I did it, and it was wrong. And so I think there are other people who are probably listening to this broadcast right now. There are who know of what's going on, and you need to cooperate, and you need to come forward. And here's the other news, Josh. The Arkansas Democrat Gazette reporting that there are more indictments to come. Did you hear that?
Yes, that was something we've been hearing, but was just reiterated yesterday that there's more investigations going on, and a big reason the prosecutors said that Neal deserved some leniency, even more so than many were expecting, because not only did he cooperate in this case in bringing, John Woods and Randall Shelton and to some extent, Orrin Parrish to justice, he's been helping in other corruption cases around the state and has agreed to continue helping in other investigations that are still ongoing. So he seems to be playing a pretty big role in how all of these public corruption cases that are being played out, the judge referred to it as a dragnet of corruption across the state and even up into Missouri, as we're saying. So that was a point that was made as well, as not only did he cooperate in this specific case, but he's cooperating in other cases of public corruption around the state.
And back on this Conduit news piece, there's a point in the article I read where the judge asked Micah Neal if there was basically a culture of corruption down there. You remember that part? What exactly was the judge getting at?
So, in my opinion, this was kind of a first opportunity for the judge to ask directly, Micah Neal, state legislator, because I don't think John Woods just didn't say anything. He didn't make a statement. But after Micah Neal's statement, the judge kind of asked him directly about a comment that Micah Neal made in a text message. And the comment Neal made was that, how can we make some money, in a message to John Woods, talking about kind of going back to, he saw how John Woods had all this nice stuff, was obviously making some money. How could he do that? And the judge pushed it on that, how, just a few months into him serving in the legislature, what was it about being down there that made that such a casual and normal thing to say? Is it just expected that when you go down there, you're going to, get paid off? And those aren't exact words from the judge, but that was basically what he was getting at. He was trying to get some insight kind of for the first time of, what is this culture of corruption? Why is it like this? And so Neal, wasn't just totally, yeah, it's awful, terrible. He said it happens more than people think. And whenever the judge asked, was it more about him just getting money, or is that just the culture, and he was just getting his piece kind of? And he said he thought it was kind of a little bit of both. And so, that has to be a recurring theme in all this is, the atmosphere down at the Marble Palace, at least at that time, and to an extent maybe still today, is that, kind of how Micah Neal said, kind of an unspoken thought that you go down there's ways for people to take care of you, to pay you off, and you're going to personally benefit in some way. And so I think the sentence of 18 years for John Woods, they tried to send a clear message that we're not going to put up with that. That's not going to happen. And Dak Keys talked a little bit about that at the press conference afterwards. But they also sent a message with Micah Neal saying, if this happens and you know about stuff that's happened, come forward now and cooperate.
Yeah, that's a big deal. The cooperation, you got to think that there's, if the investigations are still going on, Dak Keys saying, more indictments to come, but, can't comment further. You got to think there's a lot of really nervous people out there. And there's, presumably there's people that understand what all these schemes are and know them, inside and out. Now, one of those individuals is clearly Milton Rusty Cranford, who is, been in jail for a while because he tried to have a guy killed up in New Jersey, up in Missouri. That's the case out of the Western District of Missouri. He clearly is the linchpin, I think, to a lot of this. I mean, he's got his hand in all kinds of stuff. But I'm curious now. I mean, my interest is piqued. You kind of assume that Micah Neal is done now, but the fact that he's continuing to help them out with investigations, I mean, what else does he know? What other conversations has he been privy to, and where is he directing investigators, And that, to me, is probably something that other people involved in these schemes are very worried about this morning as they read the news. And,
yeah, I think so. I really picked up on the news conference. I felt like, the U.S. attorney and the kind of statements that came out in the courtroom, they were somewhat telegraphing to other people out there, hey, if you know something, it's in your best interest long term. It might not, be good short term. Your name is going to come up probably. And that's something, too, they stressed how Mike and Neal was very public with this. He came forward publicly. He said other people have come forward privately and secretly, but Mike and Neal came forward publicly. And so they really were telegraphing, Paul, and I don't know how much, is needed, that they need more people to come forward, but they at least put it out there in a clear message, in a clear sentence, that if you know something, come forward, cooperate, and if you do that, you're not going to be facing a serious, time as what John Woods got, 18 years, compared to Mike and Neal's 3-year probation.
A couple, I was on vacation last week, but there was a bunch of stories that broke on Conduit News last week about John Woods and about, Randall Shelton and everything else in their sentencing. In one of those stories, there was a question asked of that case about whether or not is this the end of the people charged in connection specifically with Ecclesia College? Josh, do you remember what his response was to that question?
Yes, I asked him that after the Randall Shelton hearing is, can we assume that these other legislators, because, Paul, specifically with Randall Shelton's case, some of the GIF money that was directed to Arkansas Health and Economic Research, the only legislators that directed that were Mike and Neal, John Woods, and Senator Bart Hester. And Senator Hester has not been charged with anything. And then when you look at Ecclesia College, there's several other legislators who did direct money to Ecclesia College. And so, the question was, can we assume any of those legislators will not be charged? And at that time he said it was, too soon to say that. And at this point, with as many investigations as there seems to be going on, I don't think they can definitively say much of anything. But at that time he said, we can't say.
Okay.
He said they hope to be able to say at some point something definitive like, this is kind of closed, this part of it, and go on. But at that time, he couldn't say. So,
yeah.
I mean, that just kind of, not piques your interest, but just kind of urges your brow, kind of thinking, man, this, when is it going to end, kind of a thing.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. When is it going to end? I have no idea. But the culture of corruption down there, at least it's, people are talking about it. It's no longer in the abstract. It's real. It's no longer, the stuff that we've been saying, Josh, that Conduit has been saying, it hasn't been sensationalized. It's not something that's just been made up. Hey, you dirty politicians and all politicians. No, there's a pattern here. And, we've been saying this for a long time, that there's something down there that really stinks. And now we're actually seeing the Justice Department get involved, and I want to thank, these U.S. attorneys. I know we know a lot that we wouldn't know if it wasn't for the Western, District of Missouri U.S. attorneys, but Dak Keese and Cody Highland. I just want to continue to publicly encourage them, because the people of Arkansas really have a crisis right now. I mean, we don't really have confidence in our own government, and slowly but surely, it seems that confidence is going to be hopefully increased again to where we have a more honest government, because these guys are going to wind up being prosecuted and exposed.
Yeah, that's a very poignant point. That's something Mike and Neal said yesterday in his statement, was he apologized to the General Assembly and he apologized to other legislators because how he has basically lowered the bar of public trust. Him and, others too. It's not just him. But he did mention that specifically. So I think that's a reality that, legislators feel and see right now, is that, based with all this public corruption, it's hard to really trust what they're doing down there. And until everyone fully comes forward, everyone's really prosecuted to the full extent of the law, and kind of all this works itself out, I think until that happens, and people know, what else could be out there and kind of maybe what should be coming. And so until all that happens, I think people are still going to have a hard time trusting our legislature. And that, that's a really sad thing, Paul, because our republic and Judge Brooks really, pushed this. The oath that these legislators took, is a very serious oath to defend the laws and to represent the people. And to undermine that by stealing money, to taking bribes, and just, the rampant corruption, just really undermines the public trust and really the backbone of our republic, that we can trust our public officials to do what's in the best interest of the people and not themselves.
Josh Waters, as always, thanks for the great reporting and updates, and you have a great weekend, okay?
All right. Thanks, Paul. You too.
All righty.